And Thomas Schaller, Architect of Light. That was my favorite. I think I have that. Watercolor paintings by a master. A retrospective of his recent artwork released by Northlight Books. On his global exposure, his work is collected worldwide and is part of a number of permanent collections, including the John Museum in Shanghai, the Watermark Museum in Fabriano, Choban Foundation in Berlin, the Pacific Arts Foundation in Newport Beach, and the Museum of Watercolor, Mexico City. Tom is a signature member of many arts organizations, including American Watercolor Society, the National Watercolor Society, and the Transparent Watercolor Society of America. He was appointed to the advisory board of American Watercolor Weekly, Streamline Media, and elected artist member of the California Art Club and the Salmagundi Art Club in New York City. He is President Emeritus of the American Society of Architectural Illustrators, elected to the American Institute of Architects, and a founding member of the group North American Watercolor Artists. And lastly, Tom is proud to be a brand ambassador for the following fine art companies: Daniel Smith Pigments, NEEF Fine Watercolor Brushes, Pao Hong Master Choice Watercolor Paper, House of Hoffman Handcrafted Artist Palettes, and Stillman and Byrne Sketchbooks. There's many more, but Tom is so talented. May I turn you over to Mr. Thomas Schaller.
Hi, everybody. First, big thank you to Zoni, Arlene, and your whole organization. I admire very much what you do, focus of what you do, and the fact that you do it at all. I think, I can't speak for anybody, but I think all of us as artists tend to kind of work alone a lot. And I did as a kid growing up. I just wanted to have a job where I could sit in a room quietly and draw and not speak to anybody. It took me many years of living to realize how important this community of artists, like-minded community, an extended family really was to me. So I feel very strongly about arts organizations in general, because I think they offer a lot of us misfit toys a place to fit in the world and to have a family outside ourselves. Yes, me too. So yeah, my life has turned out very differently than I ever imagined, much better for the most part. And largely that's because of groups such as yours. So I'm very honored that you invited me today. So what I want to talk about today, it's a whole live presentation, and I'd like it to be a pretty informal discussion, if we can do that, about creativity, finding your own voice as an artist, and how that, at least for me, ties into living the best life you can. I really firmly believe that doing art, making art, is not, well, for me, it's almost no choice. It's what I have to do. But I also think when I grew up, my parents were not very encouraging. I think many of us weren't. They wanted me to get a real job. But I've come to realize that a real job can be anything. Art, for that matter, can be anything that you, an artist can be a painter, of course, but also writer, musician, composer, but really, and I mean this sincerely, in addition, a gardener, a cook, a baker, a good parent, a good friend, even a good person. I think it's really what we bring to whatever it is we love to do that makes it artistic or something less than that. it's taken me many years of my life to figure that out. I think I used to think that art was a luxury or a scholastic endeavor or something effete rich people did or people that just didn't want to work. Maybe that's true, but it also is a very fulfilling and I think absolutely necessary way to fill our days. Because what else do we have really except time? So anyway, thank you for spending some time with me. I'm going to walk you a little bit through my process, how I come about my imagery and why I do what it is I do. Technology is our friend, but also an annoying friend because we have to figure these things out, but we're all getting there. So if there are questions as I go, please feel free to either type them in the chat or there'll be time after I get done yakking for you to respond. Okay, when I began trying to become what I considered a real artist, a word I wouldn't allow myself to use for most of my life, I guess I assumed, like many people, again, I don't want to come across as if I have answers either for me or for you or anybody really. I think that's what I want to get across, is that it's a very personal journey. I think all of us are trying to get to more or less the same place, but we get there through different means on different pathways and roadways. But I think as a younger painter starting out, I assumed the answers were out there someplace. If I took enough courses, took enough workshops, studied with the right people, practiced hard enough, someday too, I would finally reach those answers. I also thought if I could just get these initials after my name or belong to this group or that group, that would automatically make me an artist. Sadly, no, that's not true, but it didn't stop me from trying to do it. And I don't want to discount that. I think the discipline of trying to become a signature member is valid, but it's sort of the way you go about it that can either make you a happy warrior or a very unhappy person. But anyway, I did learn that that's not why I painted. I didn't paint for the approval of others. I mean, I did. And at first, I just realized that's not the way to go about it. There's a better way to square that circle. So some years ago, out of nowhere, I can't explain, I did a painting. So I'm just going to show you now. It's obviously a figure study, two people. A somewhat older man and woman in a kitchen. He's doing the dishes, she is not, she's reading a book. This image came to me actually more or less in a dream. I sketched it and then I developed it into a painting, but it turned out to be a real learning exercise because I didn't know why I did it. And it turned out, upon reflection, I realized it wasn't anything I saw with my eyes. It wasn't a scene from an old photograph. It was an interpretation of a memory I had of my grandparents who had a 60-something year marriage. And they were just an amazing couple. They had this, as a small child, interesting to watch their dynamic, gender dynamics back in the 1950s and 60s. A lot of things have changed, but a lot of things haven't. And I think I just quietly noticed the way that they navigated the world together as a couple, and they helped each other out. And it was very foundational for me as a young kid. I never thought of that as a building block to building a painting career, but in fact it was. So what I learned from that painting, I learned not in doing that painting or before, but I learned after I did that painting. And what I learned after is that the genesis of what inspires us to do a particular painting, or frankly, I think to paint at all, is not always the visual world that we see as we walk around through the world. It's inspiration for a painting can come anywhere, from a memory, from a dream, from an emotion. It can be a terrible emotion or a really good one. Art, of course, isn't always pretty. It can be challenging. It can be difficult. It can be very expressive of all kinds of emotions. So I think I came into the world of painting thinking art had to be one way. There were things an artist painted and things an artist did not paint. And it took me many years to figure out, no, of course, that's not true. Um, I think I took so much from that brief presentation of female artists. I think I'm not one, but I empathize. I think because the world projects upon us expectations of how we should behave. I think women generally probably have it much worse than men in the world of art and in probably most other professions. Again, that's changing, but it still exists. But it exists at a much lower level for male artists too. But I don't want to get into that. I think ultimately, I think I've received a leg up, whereas artists, female artists of equal talent may not have, or might have had to work harder than I did to get the same doors opened. And that's another presentation, but I feel you, I get it. I don't get it. I understand it though, it's there. On the other hand, I think there are limitations and expectations we as people and as painters put on ourselves. I wanted to be an artist so badly when I was a kid. That's all I wanted to be. I think when I was around 7 or 8, I wandered into the kitchen. I grew up in rural Ohio on a farm. And I announced to my parents that I wanted to grow up, move to New York City, and become a painter. I may as well have said I wanted to be an astronaut. It was ridiculous to them. My mother laughed. My father, I think, wanted to hit me. They just didn't get it. They didn't like it. They didn't understand it. So I'm not blaming them. I understand where, their framework of how they looked at the world. And obviously, the choice to become a professional artist can be a difficult, challenging, and expensive one. And in any case, when I was around 20, I did move to New York City and I became a painter, but not a good one. I did a bunch of paintings. I took photographs and I schlepped them around to various galleries in Soho, and I figured, how long could it take? 20 minutes or so and I'll become a famous artist. Well, within a few weeks, things like rent and food and utilities came into play, and I realized that wasn't going to happen. Because, to be perfectly honest, my father insisted, in addition to an art degree, I went ahead and got an architectural degree. One thing led to another, and I ended up having a pretty nice life doing watercolors of buildings that weren't yet built for other architects, architectural illustration. It was my goal to do this in watercolor because I loved the medium so much. Some things never change. But for many years, I did that. And it was great. I learned how to take care of myself, to run a business a little bit. I'm no master. Otis, my dog has something to say. I learned basic skills of watercolor and, invaluable skills. But around 11, 12 years ago, I decided that wasn't enough. Of course, there was a major economic collapse and everything changed. I didn't have a lot of work. So that's when I said, Well, yeah, you can get a job at Radio Shack, maybe, or you can jump in the deep end and try to become a real artist. So I sold everything I owned. I sold my apartment. I got rid of my office in New York. I got jobs for all of my little staff, and I moved out here. I live in Venice, California now. And I wasn't very young. I was in my 50s, and I decided just to give it a try. What's the worst that could happen? Little did I know. Generally speaking, I've been enormously blessed and fortunate, but I stupidly thought that becoming a commercial illustrator in watercolor, how hard could it be then to become a good fine artist? It was literally the hardest thing I've ever done, and it's not done yet. It's a process. It's still unraveling as we speak. Because I think in architecture and in painting architecture, there are rules, there are parameters, there's a framework. But in fine art, I don't have clients. And I realized a basic building block, if you set about to design a good painting, is something that was lacking in all of my commercial career. And that was myself, my own emotion, my own feeling about my subject matter, my own expression of myself. So that was a difficult realization, but an even more difficult process to realize that and then do something with it. So that's what I want to talk about today. How do any of us go about doing that? Obviously, it's not a one size fits all. It's not an answer that you can go out and get. It's something I think we all have to find for ourselves. I do think, as I said, we share a lot of these in common, but all of our paths are a little different. I fell in love, not literally, but with her work, with a female artist who wrote books that I love. She's a cartoonist. Linda Berry is her name. If you don't know her, she's really worth checking out. Her drawings are amazing, but they're sort of intentionally simplistic and childlike. I don't think they're childish at all. I think they're very sophisticated. But this book in particular, I wanted to bring today, the title is What Is This? And what this book is and was for me was just like Klieg lights of realization of what I had to do to make myself into an artist. I got this book back in 2008, and it was just a couple of years later that I finally entered my first big art shows and decided to take a leap and try to make something of myself as an artist. Her drawings are amazing. Her words, I think, are equally, if not more so, more influential. One or two quotes I picked out, but this one hit me like a ton of bricks. An image or a painting is a place. It's not a picture of a place, but it is a place in and of itself. I read that and something resonated in me, but I didn't quite get it at the time. I think when we have, oh, what's happened?
We're just putting it on the, Arlene will just put this on the side, Tom, so, because some people want to see your art while you're talking. So after a while, we can show some of your art pieces. Maybe
Sure.
we can put this down for a while.
Yeah, that's fine. This piece in particular is the one I was going to highlight today. It's recent, but and that piece too, I have a walkthrough of that very painting and how it came about.
Oh my gosh. Whew.
So anyway, the quote, the image is a place. Again, I don't know it's just another reminder that inspirations for paintings don't always come from what you look at. They come from things you read, and what things you read or music make you feel, make you remember, make you respond to. And then she went on to say, a painting, you can move into it. It seems not invented, but it's there for you to go out and find. And anyway, ultimately that became really my inspiration for being an artist, is when I realized there's a difference between what we look at and what we paint. Obviously they're related, but a painting has a very different reality from the scene that might have inspired it. Even if it's a very realistic scene, even if it's a photorealistic scene, the painting has a different reality than the inspiration for that painting. So briefly, I want to run through a couple of things that occurred to me when I moved out of the sort of scholastic commercial world of architecture and design. I realized the thing that I took with me, tried to become a painter, was that word, design. I think the act of design is critical, obviously, for building a building, but I think for creating any work of art, a piece of music, a poem, book, a painting, design. And really, design is the act of choice, choosing. What does the artist, what does the creator leave in? And what does she or he leave out? What ingredients does it take to make a good pie, for example? I'm not a good cook, but if I were, I think I know enough to know you can't just grab every spice and every ingredient in your kitchen, throw it into every single recipe. It's not going to work. I actually have tried that, and I'm a terrible cook. But it's the same in a painting. I look back at older paintings of my own, and I think even the goodish ones begin to fail because I didn't have that cutoff switch to say, this is enough, stop, don't use this color, don't use that ingredient. I had too many marks, too many colors, too many shapes, too much stuff going on. My goal as an artist is to have a unique voice that's only mine. And if I can get there, it's generally not by adding things, it's by taking things away. What do you edit away from your inspiration in order to get a good painting? So I had a couple of paintings I wanted to walk through just to go through my ideas of designing a painting.
You want us to highlight your website, Tom, and then you can pick, or how do you?
Yeah, let's do the one.
It's ready to go. Arlene already has it ready.
Well, I have a sort of a step-by-step I wanted to show you of a painting. You just showed it, but I don't remember on my website where it is. It's not on the cover, but it's called An Imaginary City. And I have a painting here of it if you can't find it.
Oh, okay.
But you did just have
Arlene,
it.
you want to highlight the website? I found a lot of them on the homepage, and then there's 3 on his works.
Yeah, you had it up on the screen earlier. It's much before this file. These are archived. You'd have to go.
Should it be on your homepage? There are 3 beautiful pieces there.
Yeah, possibly on works. If you click on works.
Works, Arlene.
I think it's the cover image to the file works. Yes. That image is entitled Imaginary Cityscape.
Wow.
It is completely imaginary. And I wanted to walk you through what went through my mind and through my studio in order to make that painting.
You want me to to put it back on you, Tom?
Yeah, if you don't mind. Well, thanks for that. That was the final painting. This was a version of it I did for Watercolor Live. If any of you suffered through
Oh, wow.
that expensive ordeal. So how that painting came about was, it started here, a little sketch. One thing Linda Berry taught me, and I really do stick to this, is the importance of keeping a visual diary. I have sketchbooks with me wherever I go. It's second nature. When I was a kid, I was very nervous and nerdy, and I just, to calm down, to wake up, to go to sleep, to get away from the world, I would draw. That's all I ever wanted to do. I just drew, and I still do that. I used to think of it as a dysfunction, but now I just think of it as part of my DNA. Fine. I think it's good. Without it, I'd be nowhere. Linda Berry wrote also something that stuck with me. We don't draw imaginary worlds to escape this one. We draw them to be able to stay.
Oh,
That's so profound to me.
it's nice.
And I realized that drawing for many of us and painting is a way to cope, to explain ourselves. It is for me. I find it overwhelming and difficult, as I'm sure we all do from time to time. And painting is my therapy. It's my religion, really.
Tom, what's your preferred drawing pen?
Drawing pen.
Drawing pen?
Yeah.
Oh, I have a huge pile of pencils, you might imagine. I use these primarily. They're Blackwing Palominos. Very soft, like a 4B. And I have a whole stack of these by my bed, and I just scribble all the time.
Is that water soluble?
No, it's just plain old graphite.
Okay.
But it's very soft and smudgy. So, you know, drawing can be kind of line-based and tedious. But these, you can hold it on its side and scribble, and you can make beautiful tonal studies and value sketches. In any case, I woke up early one morning and I did this strange little diagrammatic drawing. It's sort of just a composition of values and shapes. I didn't honestly know, again, what it was. It was much like that painting I did, a sort of a homage to my grandparents. But later in the day, I realized what this was. I had been reading another book that I love. But the title of the book is Invisible Cities by Calvino. And if you're an architect nerd, you've probably read this book. But it's just a study of the nature of people and cities. And from this book, I learned that architecture is really only as interesting or useful as the people who live there or work there or interact with it. This is an amazing book. But anyway, it's filled with important quotes. You've probably figured out I love those. They do stick with me. Anyway, when I was falling asleep, I read this. If you want to know how much darkness there is around you, just sharpen your eyes and concentrate on the distant light on the light in the distance. So that thought, if you want to know how dark it is, just squint your eyes and look at the light in the distance. And I think what I took from that was last year, I think we can all agree, hasn't quite stopped yet, a pretty difficult year for all of us. I think there were times we all felt everything was closing in, and I had this sense of being surrounded with difficulties and insurmountable problems and issues. And I honestly don't like living like that. Most people don't, I understand. And so I was thinking about the idea of the distant light in the future, the hope that I think exists for all of us in the future. So I took this little diagram and then I jotted down the quote above it. And this is one of my little visual diaries. I carry these with me wherever I go. I do all sorts of just doodles, thoughts, ideas. That's the initial sketch for the painting you just showed earlier. And I don't really intend these to be nice drawings. I can draw pretty well. I've had enough experience, but really these are just ideas, visual ideas, a visual diary, but it's an emotional expression. So
There's a question, Tom. There's a quick question. No, we know you're an architect, but could you tell us what would be your favorite subjects of art or seasons in addition to buildings?
Oh, yeah, I can. I have painted and still do lots of architectural scenery in the man-made environment. But I hope my fellow architects won't be mad at me when I say that it's not buildings that are that interesting to me. It's the people that use them. You know, why is that building there? Why is it standing there? Why is it that shape? Why is it, what are they trying to make people feel? So I have moved a little bit away from just architectural subjects in the past few years, more into figures. And so I'm not answering the question directly because the real answer is there is no answer. I paint context and contrast. So if I paint a building, I want the viewer of that painting not to see the building, but to have the emotional response that I want that person to have or that they may have. I like to paint people, figures, but in context. What are they doing? Why are they doing it? Where are they going? Where are they coming from? So figures in motion are much more interesting to me than, say, a formalistic portrait. But to be practical or direct, I don't paint a lot of landscapes, that's true. I was asked once what the most difficult place to paint I ever visited. It would have to be Norway.
Oh.
It was impossible. It's so beautiful. It's just like if there is a God, the work was already done. You know, I just didn't know what I could bring to the scenery. Why paint any of this? Just take a picture, it's done. Because I realized that my paintings are always interpretations of what I see. They're never replicas or duplicates. I always think it's the artist's job to interpret what he or she's looking at rather than just duplicate it. So that's what
Good
I'm.
answer.
Tom, can we open up the phones, the lines now for anybody to ask any questions? And can I show some of your artwork from your website while we're answering
While
those
they're
questions?
asking.
Yeah, I have one last sketch I wanted to show that related to that painting, and then
Okay.
I'm ready for any questions that you guys have.
Okay.
So I showed you the little sketch that I dreamt. I'm no genius or anything like that. I think all of us, the minute you wake up, if you jot down the dream you had, it is amazing what you remember.
Wow.
But if you get up and have a glass of water or whatever, brush your teeth, it's gone. So I just urge everybody to try that. It's fun too. Jot down the first thing that comes to your mind the minute your eyes open, and it's amazing. Anyway, I took that little sketch that I didn't understand, Then later on, a few days later, I started to develop it. I thought there is something there. And I began to analyze myself. What was I thinking? What was I feeling? And I was feeling this sense of oppression, this dark foreground closing in on me, but the light in the distance, in the future. And I thought, I think I could make a painting out of that. So here I began to flesh it out, give it a little identity, a little bit of something from my visual memory that, you know, people could relate to, that would be more universal. And then from this, a couple days later, I did that painting, The Imaginary City. And that's pretty illustrative of my typical process. It always starts from an idea, and it may not be a good one, so I just chuck it. But I fill up these sketchbooks, I flip through them later. If something resonates, I try to develop it. That may or may not become a painting. It may be a good one, a bad one, but even a bad painting is better than no painting at all. But sure, anybody have any questions?
Okay, we're opening it to questions. If you want to unmute, that's fine. Hold on. Screen. Oh, these are beautiful. Tom, wow.
Got a,
Wow.
I have loads of other similar subject matter. If you want, I could just send you through some scans of them and you can look at them.
If you want to email to Arlene.
Yeah.
well, we can't use them today, so
Not
we're running out of
today, yeah.
time.
Yeah, we'll just
So
send
thanks
out.
for sharing some of your artwork so people can understand the kinds of work you do. Am I moving too quickly?
No. I guess if I wanted to leave you with any message, it's just that don't let anybody tell you what to paint. I mean, only that comes from you. I'm not lecturing you. I'm just speaking for myself. But I think there are so many landscapes inside as well as outside that we can look at to find inspiration.
Someone wants to know, are you using ink and watercolor on these ones, Tom?
Nope, it's all watercolor. There's
Just
some pencil
pure.
you might see, but there's no ink.
Okay. So you don't underlayer, it's all watercolor.
Yeah, all transparent watercolor.
Any favorite brands, Tom? I know you're an ambassador for some, but in general, could you give a
Yeah,
few?
I am an ambassador for Daniel Smith, and I do love them. I use them, but I also like Holbein pigments a lot. I prefer more grainy, granular pigments. So the honey-based ones, the very staining pigments, I tend to avoid. They're beautiful, but they don't work for me.
Oh. Do you have a large palette or do you mix your colors?
I have a fairly limited, I have a maximum of, I think, 12 pigments.
Wow.
I will add for a specific painting here or there, but generally speaking, there are 12 basic pigments.
Use any photographs at all as reference? I mean, apart from your own drawings and your own imagination?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm always in my classes I teach, I'm always counseling my groups to not rely too much on reference photos because I think they encourage us to copy a little too much. So I use them, but I try to hide them away once I've done my initial sketch.
You plein air, Tom?
Yeah, I do a lot of plein air work. It informs my studio work and vice versa.
Oh, wow. I didn't see this. These are good.
So some of my work is just on site. Even then, I try not to just copy what I'm looking at because the light changes and,
Mhm.
but yeah, I try to capture it quickly.
Do you go back to your work, Tom, or when you're finished, you're finished?
Oh, my goal is to be finished, but I would be lying if I said I never went back. Yeah, I sometimes do. I'm almost sorry though when I do because it never looks quite as fresh. But yeah, of course, I go back and tweak a painting here and there.
Do you frame or do you leave the galleries to frame them? Or how do you
I,
keep your paintings?
I'm terrible at framing, so usually I allow my galleries to frame them.
Okay. See if there's others here. How do you get such straight lines?
That is one little skill I think
Well, you're an architect for sure.
but it really is just practice. In my workshops, I show people some little gimmicks to draw a line that looks pretty straight. I don't think it's necessary to be too precise in our work. If I would critique my own work, I would say sometimes it looks a little too precise. I want it to look a little messier. But I'm just so used to drawing that it's not that hard to draw a straight line.
You paint mostly wet into wet.
Yes, mostly. I work my paintings up from light to dark. So the lightest parts are usually wet and the darkest parts are often dry against dry.
Okay.
There's another gallery if you wanted to look
All right.
under works.
Okay, and another question. Since your preliminary drawings are in graphite, are you thinking in color simultaneously as you do that?
Great question. Yes, but primarily I'm thinking in values. The color is the last thing I think about. First, it's the idea of the painting. Second, it's the composition of shapes. Third, it's the values. And last but not least, color.
Wow.
I always think I paint more in value than I do in color, though I love color. I can't walk into an art supply store without wanting everything. But I also know that my stronger paintings have fewer rather than more colors.
Okay. Let's see. Um, Arlene, how much time do we have?
Well, we're just about up 1 or 2 minutes.
Any other questions? Tom, these are really beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Gods.
I have a
Guys, you
question.
can go to his website, and see all these beautiful paintings.
There's
Thomas, do you have a favorite blue?
Oh, gosh, that is a great question. I probably use cobalt blue more often than
I
any,
knew it.
but because it's just so useful. But I don't know that it's my favorite. I would say probably cobalt teal blue is my favorite. And if you look at a lot of my work, you'll see I use it a lot, but it is kind of green. So I don't use it as much as cobalt, but I do like it a little better.
How about in green, Tom? What's your favorite?
I used to never use green pigment. I always mixed it. I love the color green, but I think green pigments can look a little gloomy and gritty. But I was teaching at Daniel Smith about 5 years ago, and I said that out loud, but I didn't like green pigment. And I heard a gasp in the back of the room. And it was John, the owner, and he took me to school afterward and said, "You're just simply using the wrong green pigment." So I went home with a whole bag full of green pigment. So now I do.
So now,
My favorite is a Daniel Smith Jadeite green. The reason I like it is because it's made out of literal minerals ground up, mixed with adhesive. So when it dries, complementary tones of minerals float to the surface, little warm specks. So it never looks gray or flat or dull. It's very lively and beautiful. Also,
did you say jade green, Tom?
jadeite.
Jadeite.
Yeah. It's one of their Primatech colors, I think, because it's literally made out of stones, ground up stones.
Okay.
So I think my problems with green pigments before that were that they all looked a little artificial, like Windsor green is a beautiful green, but it's such a staining, aggressive color. And when it dries, it just looks flat and gray. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Okay.
I love jadeite and also serpentine green by Daniel Smith, I recommend.
So wait, Tom, so if value is the basis of your, the design and composition, then are your color choices, strictly like local color by the value, or are you also driven by like maybe your emotional response to that color in the moment?
Like all of my work, what drives me is contrast, this and that.
Right.
So I determine an emotional mood for my painting. So then I can tell, do I want it to be dominantly warm or dominantly cool?
Okay.
Probably in every case where my painting is dominantly cool, there will be warm elements and vice versa. So that starts to tell me if it's a very aggressive or emotional paint, it's likely to be dominantly warm, but then there'll be very strong elements of dark.
So I'm gonna throw something at you. Push and pull. Do you do that?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess.
I've just been watching Hoffman. Okay.
Yeah.
Push and pull.
Push and
Thank
pull.
you.
Well,
So yeah, I think color choice is critical, but it's all has to be in register with the painting. What's the emotional temperature you're trying to get to? I don't use really bright colors unless I'm trying to tell a very big, loud story. And yeah, I mean, we all know that, but I think I gear that depending on the value range I want my painting to get. If it's very light, very dark, then I can get away with much brighter, more saturated color.
Tom, thank you very much. This has been a
woo,
very nice presentation. Everybody can unmute themselves. If you have
Thank you
my
so
any-
much.
Thank you so much. It was fabulous.
you.
I'm
so
gonna get both of those-
inspiring, Tom.
Thank you for asking me that.
That was inspirational.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there a particular gallery that represents you where we could see your work in person?
Oh, yeah.
No, in fact, I pulled out of most of my galleries. And that's a whole other story. There are some small galleries, but they're very specialized. The very best place to see my work is my website.
Okay.
The new things will show up. But thank you guys. I know it was a lot of talking,
It
but
was
I think
really good.
I
Loved
think
it.
this applies to all of us in some way. I hope it was helpful. Anyway, it's great to see you all, and stay in touch.
Okay.
And any questions at all, just let me know.
You're very